you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Mr. Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are at least things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, for 16 years, and over 2,500 episodes, we are bringing the smartest minds, the most brilliant people, the people that will share with you their stories, their journeys, all their lessons they've learned in life, so that you don't have to go through anything. You can just sit there as a baby and just write everything down from the Chris Voss Show, and you'll know how to live your whole life perfectly. Well, maybe not. There's always trials and tribulations that rain that comes, but we'll get into some of that. Anyway, guys, refer the show to your family, friends, relatives, or else I'll come back there and pull the car over. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, facebook.com/Chris Voss. Oh, it's a crazy place. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking about many of her wonderful books that she has and some of her writings and thoughts and how different things have changed her life through her involvement with God and religion, et cetera, et cetera. She's the author of her latest book, I think, out called A Bun Dance. That's A Bun Dance. And if you get that, it's a play on words. July 20th, 2021, it came out. Penelope Bourdillon joins us on the show. Penelope, did I get your last name right? I forgot to double check that. Penelope?
Sorry, what was that?
What was the correct pronunciation of your last name? I want to make sure I got that right.
Julie, you talk so fast, I can't sometimes quite get it.
Is your last name Bourdillon?
Oh, last name Bourdillon. Yes, it is.
There you go. Okay. I wanted to make sure. Normally, I check that before the show.
Yeah, but just sometimes you talk terribly fast. I miss
I'll try and talk terribly slow.
Well, sort of in between.
So welcome to the show, Penelope. Give us any .coms, any websites. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And what .coms can people find you on the interwebs?
Well, I've got a website, PenelopeBourdillon.com, which isn't as good as it's going to be. It's going to be very good one day. But anyway,
stay tuned. Now, you have a passion for spreading the word of God far and wide, but you're not an evangelist. You long for friends to share in the joy that you've received in accepting your Savior and committed your life to God when you were about 50. And you talk about deep faith. You've written lots of books and helping other people and sharing your life and your insights. Give us a 30,000 overview of what's in this book, A Bun Dance.
I was given that very strange title about, oh gosh, quite soon after my husband died, which was 20-something years ago. And somebody said, will you write another book? So I just finished one. And I said, no, never again. I never meant to write any of them, really. They have written themselves. And as I said it, this extraordinary sequence of words came, a bun dance. And of course, it's God's abundance. And so during COVID, I sat myself down every afternoon because it was so lovely. There were no chores to do. Well, I just overlooked the chores. And the weather was lovely, and I worked in my garden all morning, and I bubbled with my son and his family. And I had a wonderful time during COVID. And I'd got boxes and boxes full of stuff that I'd scribbled down if I'd been to some lecture or something, and sort of godly things. And I got them all laid out on a table, and I kind of sorted them into the odd chapter and things. And the book, called Abundance, kind of wrote itself. And then, rather sadly, because some dear friends illustrated it for me, and did the front cover, but everybody thought that it was a children's book. They were sort of rather childish, very clever drawings, but I think it took away from the actual text, because although I mean it to be not very, very heavy and I love God and one must not enjoy oneself, I wanted it to be the sort of book that people think, hey, this Bible thing isn't really quite so deadly dull as I thought it was. And I've tried to bring out, there are so many wonderful biblical quotes that are just interesting and fun, and let's enjoy it. I think God, I know he's fearsome and awesome in many ways, but golly, he's got a sense of humor too. And I don't mean that in a sort of silly way, but he is an amazing God. And there's so much to be joyful about and hopeful for. And there's just, I can't really put it all into words. I'm much better at writing than I am at talking.
I'm better at talking than writing, so I've got that.
Yeah, well, lucky you.
Yes.
Go on.
Now, I think in your bio it said that you discovered God or religion maybe when you turned 50
not
or in
religion.
your 50s? Or
I'm not religious. I'm not.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. Spiritual, perhaps, I hope. But all I care about is having a relationship with God. I honestly don't. I went to church all my life because my parents did, and then my husband did, and I thought it was deadly. I said all the right things, and I just thought that's what one did on a Sunday. And then suddenly, when I was over 50, things happened, and life's never been the same again since.
Wow. Well, and you're sharing the message now. The subtitle of this book is basically How to Enjoy Reading Your Bible, Abundance. Tell us how that integrates the dancing or abundance, as it were, with the Bible and how to enjoy it.
God, nothing's too small for God, and equally nothing's too big for him. You can, the most important thing that anybody, I think, can ever have during this transitory life that we have on the earth is to realize that God is a friend. I think I find it easier to say that Jesus is a friend. I think God still rather is a little bit awesome to call one a friend, but one just cannot know the peace and the joy and just you see, I can't put it into words.
Well, it sounds like it's found in your book.
I hope it comes through them, because I so want other people to discover what I have found. And I wasn't looking for it particularly. It just happened one day, and the scales fell off my eyes. And I can't talk to my friends or my family about it because they all think I've gone a bit funny, I think, really.
Really?
And I just want them to find what I have found. Because I think I'm very, very blessed to do so, because I have never lost the joy that I have in my heart when I first found Jesus.
Now, you have some other books, too. Pretty interesting. People can find on your website and I believe on Amazon. Hope in the Valley, A Companion in Times of Bereavement. You want to tell us a little bit about that book?
I love that. It's a funny little book. And I wrote it about 6 years after my husband had died, because I thought to myself, I can perhaps help a few people. Even one person would be better than nothing, to find, not just fall into the same holes that I fell into, of sort of ditches after my husband died, because I thought if I could just write something to encourage them. And I mean, it is hellish when you lose somebody that you really have. I've spent 40-something years with him, and he was my best friend. And he just, it's like being sort of torn apart, and everything we've lived for all those years has just suddenly gone. But there's no point sticking around with a long face, because nobody wants to know anybody who's miserable. You know, they don't. Let's be honest.
I think that's true.
I remember bursting into tears when I talked to one of the children after a few weeks, and she didn't ring again for a bit. And I thought, come on, pick yourself up and get on. And he would have said, in fact, he used to say to me something, because he was a little bit older than I am, and he'd say, "Oh, I'll go along before you do." He said, "You'll have to find somebody else." A slight pause, and then he said, "We'll leave it a few weeks."
Or leave it a few weeks. I love it.
And here I am 24 years later, and I don't, I'm just looking forward to seeing him again. Anyway, there we are. But, you know, there is life after a really miserable time. And that's what I wanted to show in Hope in the Valley, because, and, you know, still, it must be about, he died 24 years ago, and I wrote it 6 years later. So it must be, my maths isn't very good, about 16 years. And people are still buying it and sending me the most wonderful letters that all completely different. I had one just a very short time ago, how it really helped people. One lovely lady who I'd never heard of, never met, she said she read it 3 times in the first week after her husband had died, and she couldn't have done without it. And I just do like that book. I mean, it's quite small, and you can put it in your pocket, and it, I think, has helped people. Perhaps not everybody who's read it, but I have had wonderful, wonderful feedback, and and it's sort of timeless. I hope it'll go on, you know, for a long time, helping people.
You know, that's the beautiful thing about sharing our stories, our cathartic moments, even sometimes the darkest of times. It's all about how we react to those moments and how we survive them. You know, we had somebody on yesterday who survived cancer twice. And, you know, that's a hell of a thing to be faced with. Yeah. And, you know, sharing our stories, you know, we find that, you know, there's been times where I felt I was all alone in the world. Like I was just under, you know, whatever the universe would add me on its list for persecution. And you get in that space where you feel victimized, and just everything coming at you is like, well, the world and universe hates me, clearly. And it's hard to get out. And so when you find other people who had other ways that maybe they were going through the same thing, you find, number one, you're not alone. And number two, you find a blueprint, as we call on the show, to help get out of, you know, the jam you might be in. Or maybe, you know, if you listen to one of our shows and, you know, we're talking today about being widowed and a spouse of I think you said 40 plus years going, you know, there are people out there, and maybe they'll hear this show and maybe it won't matter to them much. And then one day it may happen to them, and they can go, oh, I remember that time on the Chris Voss show. There's a wonderful young lady on the show, and she had a blueprint for how to survive this moment. And that's really the beauty of what we do in sharing stories with each other in books like yourselves.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's so lovely. Yes.
There you go.
So,
go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, would you like to know about the 4 Graces?
Yes, let's get into that one. I was just about to pull that up.
Because I never meant to write a book, ever. It was the millennium. It was ready for the millennium year, so it must have been just the end of last century. And a very great friend of mine, we have a very big agricultural show in our little market town, because I'm in a very remote part of Wales, right up in the hills. But the one thing that happens is that it's the biggest agricultural show in Europe. And people come from all over Wales and further afield. And it's quite a big thing. And this friend's husband was president in the millennium year. And they had to make a lot of money to the president always has to. And so she asked me to write a prayer for this prayer book that she was going to assemble. And I said rather stupidly, oh, it's going to be an awfully dull book. Everybody will say, God bless the hills and the valleys and make it a nice show. Amen. So that we went our way. And the next time I saw her, she said, yes, I've been thinking about what you said. I think you better do all the text. And because she's a professional artist, and she painted every single Anglican church in Radnorshire. There were 63 of them. And so quite a thing to get round, and it was probably raining when she got there and she couldn't paint. And anyway, she did her lovely pictures of the churches, and I had to do the text. And I had such fun doing it. And we had fun together. You know, it took us about a year, sort of a lot of telephone calls backwards and forwards. And anyway, it came out. And between us, we knew a lot of people in Wales. And I think people bought it just to be rather kind to us. And then it came back for more and more and more. And it just flew off the shelves. And there we were, two rather stupid middle-aged women doing this book. But it worked. And so it was amazing. And it just, anyway, that's a long time ago now. So then we did another one, which we thought would be the same, and it never was. It was actually probably a much better book, but it rather sort of sat around on the shelves. I think it was a bit sort of deeper, and because the other one you could pick up and just read a chapter, not a chapter, just a page, and it just appealed. And the next one didn't, so that was that. And I thought, you know, I never meant to write anything. Yeah.
Well, fate has an interesting way.
Sorry, what was that?
Fate kind of has an interesting way that way, huh?
It does. God works in very mysterious ways. And I didn't quite know that then, I don't think. So anyway, on we went. And there was a lapse. And then my husband died. And then I wrote Hope in the Valley. And that was when somebody said, are you going to write another book? And I said, no, never again. But Abundance followed. And then they're all completely different, my books. Some are more about God than others. And then I did a very frivolous one, which I haven't given you. It's called Rhymes Without Reason. And that's just a bit of fun. So if anybody wanted to read something rather silly and frivolous, it'll be on my website. But then came Pencerrig.
Yes, the next book.
Yes, and that was very different. And it's all about a rather lovely house in mid Wales. And I won't go into details because I'll just hold it up to you because you might be able to see that it is rather a lovely house.
Is it a novel or a history book?
No, it's about my husband's grandmother. Stop me if I go into too much detail, but she inherited 2 lovely estates in mid Wales from her mother's family, and from her father's family came quite a lot of money from mining royalties and things, not to be thought about too much nowadays. Anyway, so she suddenly had all this money and wonderful estates, and she built schools and chapels and churches, and it did an immense amount of good. This was sort of mid-18th century. And sadly now, my husband and I lived in one of these lovely houses, which my son, we downsized, and my son now lives there. And this one is now falling into a terrible state of disrepair. It really is very sad, and some rather amazing things happened there because it was all to do, well, not all to do, but it was. Am I going on too much about it?
No, you're fine. You're fine. We've got time. Yeah.
Because it is sort of quite interesting to Welsh people anyway. the Welsh revival in the 18th century, before the big one, took place just a little bit down the valley, and Howell Harris, who was one of the instigators of that revival, used to go to Pencerrig a lot. And it's amazing. And Thomas Jones, the very well-known, he's the second best-known artist in Wales in the 18th century. And he lived there for a long time. So it's got quite a national importance, and we're trying to sort of stop it falling down. And Thomas Jones' pictures are now, there are some for sale. They're really wonderful pictures. So there's a lot to recommend the story about it. And the same lovely artist friend of me, she's working very hard to try and preserve it for the nation. And she said to me, I suppose 2 or 3 years ago, she said, I think you ought to write something about Pencerrig. And I thought she meant just a little sort of brochure or something. And I was a bit busy at the time and I didn't do much about it. So I said to her, well, what were you thinking, sort of, how many pages? And she said, about 50 or 60. And I said, I can't do that. I don't know, I thought it would just be about sort of 7 or 8 little leaflets. And I started, what's the word?
A bit of more than you could chew?
Yes, just reading about it. And the more I read, the more I was drawn in. And it was so fascinating, because having lived in one of these houses all those years, I learnt so much about it. And I must just tell you a silly little story. This wonderful great-grandmother of my husband, she used to go between the two houses. They were about 12 miles apart, and up hills and down, up and down, quite a tricky journey. And she used to take her house cows and her grand piano and quite a lot of luggage, I would think, and she'd go down in the autumn and spend the winters down there, and then she'd come up in the spring again, bringing the cows and the piano and everything else back with her. And when I first came to the village, little village in Wales, there were several lovely old ladies then, and they used to say it was as if the Queen was coming back, and they were all allowed the day off school, and it was a real excitement. So it was such fun researching that book. So I learned a lot about it. So anyway, that's enough about that.
Awesome sauce. So we covered the books. Did we cover the Onion book?
That is my testimony.
Okay.
Because what happened was, when I had one of those moments, and the scales fell from my eyes, and very extraordinarily. And somebody told me that I must write a journal. Well, I'm not very good at writing journals, but so many amazing things happened. I would sit down at the end of about, say, a month, and just quickly type out an A4 sheet of what had happened. And I kept all this, and I thought, what's all this stuff? What am I going to do with it? I don't want all these things that have happened to me. Anyway, I then decided after a few years that I'd just self-publish it and send it to some of my sort of enlightened friends, because by that time I'd sort of got a lot of lovely Christian people. And it's such a divisive word, isn't it, Christian? Because I'd been a Christian all my life, but I hadn't seen the light. Do you know what I mean?
I don't. I'm an atheist, but I'll take your word for it.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like having a rather blurred television that you can just about see the image, and suddenly you switch the aerial in, and you see a clear picture.
Get that perfect picture. We used to have those TVs when we were kids. When I was a kid, at least.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
You're younger than me, so.
Don't be like that. I love being old, and I'm not. I'm not.
Well, flattery. We try everything we can on the show to make our guests feel good. So, plus it makes me feel younger. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. As we go out, any other books we want to talk about? I know there's Rhymes Without Reason, but it's a book.
That's completely dotty. It is because they tried to make the people who have published some of the others' books, they said, "Oh, you must write some more." And I said, "No, I don't want to." I never wanted to write any of them. And they said, "Oh, yes, you must, because then this and that." And I then suddenly thought that when I'd had a lovely time, just in the last sort of 20 years, if I'd had a nice holiday or done things with somebody, I very often wrote a sort of silly rhyme thing to say thank you. And I kept a copy of them all. And I thought they were after me to write something else. And I said, well, I have got some rather funny, well, sort of silly, funny things, and sent them a few. And they said, oh, yes, that'd be lovely. They'll see the other side to you. You know that because I am not religious. I do want you to know that, because I'm not, religion, I think, is a funny thing. And this is totally unlike any sort of godly book. It's just me having a very nice time with lots of different people in different parts of the world and all over the place. And it's called Rhymes Without Reason. And if anybody wants to have a bit of a sort of laugh, very inconsequential, but it's just a bit of fun.
There you go. Any future books maybe you're working on or different things?
No, because I've just typeset all the abundance, because having taken out the pictures, of course, all the text went wrong, and I have gone nearly mad. I really have. I am quite a long way around the bend because it's taken so long to do, and I think never again. But I think what I'm going to try and do is a blog, because then I can just do what I'm thinking about, because I do sometimes have an idea that I want to share with people. And as I say, I'm not very good at talking, and I'm certainly no evangelist. And if anyone, the moment I know somebody's a believer, and sorry about you, but I can then talk all day about God, but I cannot say to somebody, you need Jesus in your life.
Yeah, it's something a lot of people have to discover on their own.
Sorry, what was that?
I think it's something people have to discover on their own, really. They're right,
yes.
Don't they?
You can't do it for anybody else.
Yeah.
So at the moment,
it's kind of like tacos. You have to discover it on your own to find out how good it is.
Yeah. So at the moment, nothing, but you never know. I mean, as I say, I never meant to write any of the other ones. So, but I think I'm too old now for all this.
You're never too old. We have one young lady on the show. I think she's 90 or 95. She's put out probably 100 books, novels. She comes on. She's been on the show probably more than anyone, and she just keeps pumping out these books. So you're never too old.
No, but she's a proper author. I never really meant to be one.
Oh, come on. You've got 4 or 5 books now. I think at 4 or 5, you can qualify as a proper author. And certainly most barely get one out if they get it at all. So,
well, you're very kind, but I think it'll have to be a blog from now on.
Well, and people love that. They love following up with their favorite authors. They like knowing what's going on. Some of the things they're doing is a great way to keep a nice community for your audience that loves your work. And so I highly recommend doing it, because I do one and it annoys the crap out of my audience. So it's been wonderful to have you on and talk to you, Penelope, and such a wonderful thing. Give us your final thoughts as we go out, and any .coms you want people to find you on the interwebs. PenelopeBourdillon.com, and I think and hope that
I think the books are on all the normal channels, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those sort of things. And I would just love it if it encourages anybody to find out more about Jesus and have a relationship with him, because all I want to do, it sounds awfully strange, is to spread the word of God. And I can't do it. Well, they say, don't they, go out and preach the gospel, strike pause, and if necessary, use words.
Well, that's how we inspire each other and share each other's message. And then it's up to people to take, your experience and see how it can maybe fit into theirs. Thank you very much, Penelope, for being on the show. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And check out her book we start off the show with, A Bun Dance, out July 20th, 2021. Also check out our website and all that good stuff. For those of you, thank you for tuning in the show. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places in the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us.